So the Demon's Souls remake is happening. Heck, for one of my best friends, it was the only thing he wanted from the PS5 reveal. It also got me thinking about remakes. It seems like every release quarter has some classic game returning to the zeitgeist. I mean, in the past 2 years alone, we've gotten Resident Evil 2, Trial of Mana, Resident Evil 3, Link's Awakening, Final Fantasy VII, Master Chief Collection, Spyro Reignited, Shadow of the Colossus, Black Mesa. What I'm trying to say is that remakes are as present in the games industry as they are in the movie industry. But why is that? As someone whose background is in TV and film, I could say the easiest answer is money. Making stuff is expensive, and studios don't like to take risks. So why fund something that doesn't have any existing goodwill when you can just do the same thing that already worked before? Now look, I get it. These studios are companies, and at the end of the day, they want to make money. But you have to admit, a lot of these remakes are creatively bankrupt or just miss the point entirely. But why then do video game remakes score so highly when film remakes are often seen as lesser than the original source material? Well, for one thing, you can argue there's an actual need for video games to be remade, while with film it's harder to justify. I can still buy a copy of Sam Raimi's Evil Dead on DVD and play it on a Blu-ray player, so why the hell do I need a remake of this movie? Now, if you're one of those young people I'm screaming at to turn that rack down and stop stepping on my lawn, you may not know what RGB and SCART are. You see, back when our Blu-rays were bricks and our flat screens were fat screens, we had no HDMI. But as technology improved, so too did the signals and cables we were using. Because of these, old connections were phased out for the streamlined and higher quality HDMI. Now your consoles from the PS2 and prior won't work on your TV, meaning entire generations of games are just totally inaccessible to the average consumer unless you want to pay out your ass just so you can play Hey You Pikachu on your LG smart screen.
Fuck you, you dumb fucking Pikachu! Fuck you and your ass, you fucking yellow prick!
Yeah, maybe this isn't worth it. So unlike movies which have all been preserved on streaming service or physical media, your games were lost. So yeah, game preservation is a factor, but as we've seen mini consoles blowing up in recent years, why not use that instead? To which I ask, which would you, having never played Resident Evil 2, prefer to play? The original? Or the remake? It's not just that remakes can make a game look prettier. If anything, that should be expected given the leaps in tech and game design, but maybe it can correct issues or shortcomings it faced in its initial release, or that have cropped up since. Once again, RE2 is great for this, as gone are the tanky controls and the fixed camera angles. Instead we get the more widely used over-the-shoulder camera and a much more manageable movement style. Okay, cool, so we get a chance to update the issues that have risen due to innovations and changing tastes. Point for game remakes. Now Resident Evil 2 could stop here, but once again, being that it is a game that is beloved by fans and its developers, Capcom goes the extra mile, and in my opinion, builds on the foundations of the original Resi 2. Raccoon City Police Department is a great setting in the OG, and Remake keeps that atmosphere alive here with the use of ambient sound and limiting the light players have to make up for giving them free control of the camera, and even adding Mr. X earlier into the game. So heck yeah, Resident Evil 2 Remake is great, and due to these changes, it's arguably better than the original when it comes to waking up your parents at 3 AM.
What? Nothing, sorry, I just startled myself.
Another thing remakes can do is add content that may have been cut for time in the original, or even add in new areas. The Pokemon franchise was super good for doing this when it remade games, and if you ask me, Pokemon Soul Silver and Heart Gold are the two best Pokemon games because of these additions. But for me, the best remakes are the ones that completely change how you feel about the source material. Spyro Reignited trilogy is so good, I've bought it twice, and I didn't expect it to make the first game my favorite in the trilogy. While 2 is probably the better game and 3 has way more variety, you can tell the people at Toys for Bob gave a shit about the series with how stylized everything is, and how they even fixed something I didn't realize was a problem until it was changed. So in OG Spyro you save dragons, and they're all pretty much the same. However, in Reignited, there's so much variety in these character models now, I just want to free them all so I can see them. Not to mention, they actually shake up the camera work in these scenes, so it's not just a static one-shot, two-shot. It's a lot of work for a small change that nobody complained about in the original, but like I said, it shows that they actually care, which is more than I can say for some developers.
Oh, yeah, there it is. There it is, the usual suspects.
Much like how some movie remakes can actually be masterpieces. Y'all sleeping on Jon Carpenter's The Thing. Some game remakes can either ruin the experience or just be piss poor efforts, such as Vicarious Vision's Crash Bandicoot games. Now I'm fully aware nostalgia is probably at play here, but by their own admission, they didn't spend time updating these games. The platforming that was already pixel perfect in Crash 1 becomes even more of a nightmare. Not to mention, in the OG Crash releases, physics are altered slightly across all 3 games to accommodate for the shift in design. I mean, if you look at Crash 1 through 3, there's a major change in the structure of levels, so Crash had to change to accommodate that. Vicarious Visions didn't seem to want to do that for consistency reasons, so they made the game kind of a broken mess that makes me hate it. Now, the Insane trilogy sold really well, so the obvious answer was to remake CTR, Crash Team Racing. Let's give Vicarious Visions the benefit of the doubt and say the reason I hate their remakes is because they are owned by game industry parasite Activision, who, after releasing Nitro Kart completely microtransaction free, then decided after the game had been out for like a month to add in microtransactions cause shit if they weren't making good reviews scores and bank. This is fucked for so many reasons, cause now microtransactions aren't just ruining new games, the power of the remake machine now means they can ruin stone cold classics like Crash. Not everyone is as lucky as me to own a Vita, so when the sour taste of nitro fuel soils my mouth, I can just play the original CTR on that. However, you guys are pretty much held at nostalgia ransom in order to play a pretty good game being turned into a mess by microtransactions. It's not enough for some companies to just make a quick buck off your nostalgia. If a game can earn post-launch, doesn't matter how predatory or tacked on to the game the gimmick is, some companies just can't resist it. But it's not like a classic, quintessential game has been ruined by this remake culture. Not something that ruins its own mechanics and makes you wonder why they did it in the first place. It's not like they do it to a game considered one of the greatest of all time. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to be excused for a moment. So, I know with the other games, I didn't really preface my history with them, but I really need you to know I'm not one of those people that had a sexual awakening to Tifa and her polygonal chest rockets. I have played through Final Fantasies 13, 15, 9, and 7 in that order, with my first full playthrough of 7 being a month before I played through the remake. I like 7, I don't love it. I am confident, however, in saying that I hate Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, before I really bash it, just know it's not without redemption. Its orchestral soundtrack is amazing. The voice actors do a really good job capturing their characters, and the combat set pieces can be amazing. The direction the story is going in is interesting to me and kind of separates this from just being a straight up remake, and I appreciate that. But there's just some stuff in this that makes me want to take the disc and do this. Square Enix has this weird notion that turn-based combat systems don't work or that people hate them, yet there are a crap ton of games that use turn-based combat and are stupid popular that they also make. Now maybe the idea is that you need something to spice it up. FF7 already has that in the materia system, which is an easy to use, hard to master situation, which remains mostly intact. But there are weird choices, like how summons are like situational commands, unlike in the original, and the actual difficulty of the game isn't all that hard until the later chapters spike ridiculously hard. But probably the biggest issue facing Final Fantasy VII Remake is also the biggest deviation from the original. If there was one issue Final Fantasy VII doesn't have for the first major chunk of the game, it's pacing and variety. The Midgar section of Final Fantasy VII is a fantastic introduction with amazing set pieces and skips along like an Avengers movie. Remake only contains this section, and honestly, if you could only have one section of 7 on a disc, the Midgar stuff is great. What it didn't need was more padding than a tsundere's bra. That's one for the anime fans. It starts off real strong with the Reactor 1 bombing and Scorpion boss fight, but in the original, you immediately head home and get ready for the Sector 5 run. There is a whole chapter in between these two events filled with the most mundane cookie cutter side quests I've ever seen. Go to place, collect things, kill monster, report back, kill more monsters, buy things to give to person to finish quest, get lectured by an old lady who has no place saying anything she's saying to you.
So when she talks, are you really listening? Thinking about her and her feelings?
Mind your own damn business, Gene!
But Kevin, if you hate them so much, why did you do them all? Well, audience, that's cause just before I gave up on doing these quests, one of them handed me a weapon which had a skill I'd use for the rest of the game, meaning I was now afraid of passing up on anything that could have potentially been as handy as that. On top of that, these quests drop so much gil and XP that you will need them for the later game. If you've seen my video on gameplay loops, shameless plug, you will know I hate when games waste your time, and Final Fantasy VII Remake seems to love wasting your time. They added a whole new section nobody wanted or asked for right before one of the most urgent moments in the game. Yeah, the sky's fallen, but let's be Ghostbusters for a quick sec. I had never known the disappointment my father feels in me till I played Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's just it. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Because you know the only reason they're going to get away with charging you another $60 for another 20 hours of padding with 10 hours of actually good stuff is because this is Final Fantasy VII, one of the most recognizable and beloved games in the franchise, if not the entirety of gaming. To see it just dolled up and trotted out like a common whore just really breaks my heart and makes me doubt the validity of remakes. But studios like Toys for Bob and Bluepoint Games, I hope you keep true to what you do, because your games show me there's actual love and passion brought into bringing these games not just to modern platforms, but to a newer audience who may never have grown up with Spyro or Shadow of the Colossus. But bigger companies like Square or Activision only seem to respect the audience for the nostalgia buy they'll know you'll make. Remakes are super important for gaming and updating classics, but just because we're implementing modern conveniences doesn't give these companies free rein to tack on modern issues and contrivances. Heck, I didn't even talk about spiritual remakes like Bloodstained or Stardew Valley, which shows that you can do these games well. That's a video for another time. I'm Kevin. Please don't burn my house down because I didn't like Final Fantasy VII Remake. And good night. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. Was I a bit too hard on Final Fantasy VII Remake? Are there other remakes you felt fell short of the bar in terms of, the original compared to this new version? If this is your first time watching the channel and you liked my stuff, maybe subscribe. Hopefully I'll have like an annotation somewhere on screen for a playlist of my other videos. But if you already are subbed, thank you. We broke 100 recently, which, I guess we're the little channel that could now. I don't know if I'll do anything special for it. If you guys have suggestions of stuff you might want to see, you can tweet at me. My Twitter should be in the description or on the screen. I don't know. YouTube's weird. But yeah, thanks for watching, subscribing. If you have, I appreciate it. And yeah, stay safe. See you in the next one. Feet pics at 1 million subs for anybody who's interested. Just putting it out there.